You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. Oh, my gosh, it's Monday. If you're watching this 15 years from now, you're like, it's not Monday, Chris, on YouTube. Guys, welcome to the big show, our family, the Chris Voss Show family podcast that loves you but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as your mother-in-law that time you forgot to take out the garbage. I don't know what that means, but you know what you did, and she'll never forget it. Which, whatever, you probably earned it. So try and pay better attention and do your chores or whatever. I don't know. That's what your mom told me too. Guys, we have an amazing author and gentleman on the show. He is both an author and a gentleman. I have that as certified by the Gentleman Authority Council. That was founded in 1883. The shit that I make up in the ramble is extraordinary sometimes, even to me. And so therefore, you will be learning much from him, not only about gentlemanese. Is there such a thing as gentlemanese? And also his extraordinary book and authorship that he has put into it. And we're going to learn about his life and stories about his life, because that's what you're going to learn about. For 15 years, we've been bringing the Chris Voss Show, the billionaires, the CEOs, the Pulitzer Prize winners, the newsmakers, all the great authors. And then there's just little old me with a mic. I don't know what that means. Anyway, guys, we have Kevin W. Jones on the show with us today. His hottest new book came out June 6th, 2023, Opening the Corporate Closet, Transforming Biases to Gay Advancement in Corporate America. We're going to talk about biases and all that stuff that goes on and how to overcome them and how to build a more inclusive world. And he is a guy, he's a gentleman, as I mentioned before, but he's also a native Texan. He graduated from Baylor University, then studied economics in France. And he then began his career as a French translator for a major telecommunications company, which took him to London. There he moved into a public affairs role, working closely with UK members of parliament. When he returned to Dallas, he began his career with Ernst & Young. As he progressed through the ranks, he discovered his passion for helping people to do what they do best. Along the way, he earned his International Coaching Federation certification and holds the Associate Certified Coach credential. And he has the Gentleman credential as well, I hear. In his last role with the EY, he became America's Head of Leadership Services, where he led external client engagement around EY's leadership, development, service offerings, including group and individual coaching. And after retiring in January 2023, he founded Concilium Coaching, a boutique coaching firm dedicated helping leaders in the LGBTQ community and their allies, where he puts his passion to play every day. And now he's on the show. Welcome to the show, Kevin. How are you?
Hey, Chris. I'm great. Thank you. It's good to be here today.
There you go. And it's an honor to have you as well. Thanks for coming on the show with your gentlemanese stuff that I make up in the thing. I think I'm going to run with that forever. I got to Google that and see if I just create a new word. Give us your .com so people can find you on the interwebs.
Yeah, it's conciliumcoachingllc.com. That's a mouthful, but conciliumcoachingllc.com. It's Latin for collaboration and guidance. I'm a big Latin geek, so that explains why you got to have such a challenging thing to look up online.
There you go. So let's get a 30,000 overview of the book and what's inside.
Yeah. So, the book came about because of an idea that I had a few years ago working in corporate America. Mm-hmm. It focuses on the challenges that people in the LGBTQ community face as they work their way up the corporate ladder. Some of the challenges are barriers that they put in front of themselves. Some of them are institutional barriers. Some of them are microaggressions. But for all sorts of reasons, people aren't making it up to the top as LGBTQ people in the same numbers and the same representation as other minorities are.
Hmm. So that's having an impact. That we're still struggling with the inclusion sort of thing in the corporate world. Then.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I would add is it's the book also kind of takes my own life and my own experiences as somebody who also moved up in corporate America. But it kind of starts off with my childhood, some of those influences, because I always say in my coaching practice, we don't just and we're this person who we are today. We bring childhood and all those experiences with us. And so if you grew up LGBTQ, you're showing up with all those experiences as well. And those have a big impact on your ability to advance based on what you tell yourself as well as what you hear from others.
There you go. I mean, it seems that there's inherent bias in just how humans operate. It seems, but we're trying to overcome a lot of the different things. Opening the corporate closet, maybe encouraging people to come out of the closet if they're hiding. Have you thought about sending this to Tom Cruise or John Travolta?
Yeah, I've got it. John Travolta has a restraining order on me, so I can't send anything to him. But I'm going to try it with Tom Cruise. Kidding.
There you go.
Kidding aside, yeah.
Send it as a massage therapist. I've heard about that. Anyway, so give us your story. I've given you a little biography on you, but people like to hear your story from your words. Tell us how you grew up and kind of how you went through this journey that got you to where you are today.
Yeah, I grew up in Southeast Texas in a town called Beaumont, about an hour and a half east of Houston, right on the Louisiana border. Grew up Southern Baptist, and in the early mid 70s was in elementary, junior high school. So picture that world. And I
grew up Mormon, so yeah, I know that.
Well, there you go. We'll have to swap some more notes after the podcast, and all that came with that. And I had a great family, great childhood, except for the fact that I knew something was different about me. Always knew. And in church, I was probably the loudest singer, the most active participant in the youth choir and youth events, trying to convince everybody that I was better than everybody else, so that if they ever found out my secret, it wouldn't matter. And you learn really quickly how to hide those things, especially in Southeast Texas, which is pretty much a big oil community and a lot of people who are happy to tell you why your lifestyle is wrong. And I use that word lifestyle in quotes. It's obviously not a lifestyle. You're born with it. But I grew up with that and grew up learning how to hide it and firmly in the closet, especially when I saw how the bullies at my school treated other people. And I'll say one more thing on top of that. If people of a certain age, like me, you're much younger, so you probably don't remember this, but people of a certain age remember Anita Bryant and all of her. She was the orange juice spokesperson in Florida. And she spoke a lot about the homosexual agenda in the 70s and how gays were trying to convert your children. Oh, wow. And I remember all this. I was 10, 11 years old, and this was all at the forefront of my mind, on top of our Southern Baptist preacher preaching about the sins of homosexuality and the abomination. So that's kind of the childhood I grew up in. I mean, it's not as bleak as all that. I had fun times as well. That was this environment that was immersing me in identifying new and creative ways of hiding who I was.
Wow. It sounds like it was quite the struggle. So when did you finally decide to come out, and what was the proponent that, made you decide to, step into that light where, you were going to be exposed?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I talk about a little bit in the book, this notion of coming out more than once, which is something I did. And for many people like us, and I digress for a moment, we come out a lot. But to your point, I came out once and for all when I was 25 years old. I'd come back to the U.S. from France. I was just tired. I was exhausted of trying to pretend. Yeah. And it just got to be too much emotionally, physically. I stopped going out with old friends because I was so concerned about what they would think. And so finally, I said, enough is enough. I came out to all my friends, all my family, and apologies if you hear the dogs in the background. They're defending me against the UPS man. Two crazy Boston Terriers. But anyway, so I finally came out once and for all, and I never looked back. And the funny thing is, most of the people I came out to said, yeah, we already knew. So much for like the big, so anticlimactic.
Well, it's keeping secrets. I saw this. Oprah had something said this on the show once. The secrets you keep inside are like poison, and until you let them out, they tend to infect you the most. Let me ask you this: when you were in France and overseas doing stuff before you came back to the U.S. and came out, were you able to? Did you find you were more accepted there? Were you able to come out there?
The funny thing is, no. That's
Really?
the short
Wow.
answer. Yeah.
I would have
I
thought.
think, well, you would, right? You'd think, oh, this is Europe. It's pretty open, pretty liberal. But if I think about the time period, this was, say, 1990, 91, 92, we're still in a time period where you've got sort of this Latin culture and people are largely Roman Catholic. And so even in the large cities, there is this sort of sense of machismo. And if you're gay, then you're all these things, all these stereotypes. And so I pretty quickly realized when I was there that as liberal as it is in many ways from a social safety net perspective, socialized medicine and so on, when it came to those old societal norms, they were still pretty homophobic. So I stayed firmly in the closet.
Wow, that's amazing. You think about where we're at now, where we're supposed to progress so far that we understand everything, and it's supposed to be more inclusive. But we still have more work to do, which I guess leads us right back into your book. Did you find that when you went to work with it was Ernst and Young, I think?
Yes. Yeah.
That you were experiencing sort of biases you were trying to advance through the corporations.
What's funny about that time period with Ernst & Young, when I started there in 2005, and I was out from day one. And the big difference was a lot of life had happened, but also I had a partner by then, who's my now husband, Simon. And I said, I am not going to be unfair to him by pretending I'm somebody I'm not. And so for the very first day, I was out. And from my own perspective, what was limiting was not the firm. The firm was and still is very supportive of DEI efforts, of people bringing what we say, we bring your full self to work every day. And so it wasn't so much that the firm had any limitations on me, but I put some limitations on myself. And part of that is, and I talk about this in the book as well, it's easy to say, with all due respect to Ernst & Young, it's easy to say bring your full self to work because they did encourage it. But I had clients, and most of my day was spent working externally with people in the oil and gas sector who may not have been quite as accepting of the LGBTQ community as people within the firm. And so I had to make these micro decisions all the time about how I interacted with these people, what I would tell them, what I wouldn't, because it might affect my career indirectly if they decided they didn't want to work with somebody who was gay. Yeah.
It's definitely an issue. I remember our first as our company was growing and becoming large and expanding pretty rapidly. I remember, we used to talk, we're like, it's a matter of time till somebody pulls a sexual harassment crap in the office. And I remember one time my vice president walked into me, and I'll just make up some names here. He goes, yeah, we got a sexual harassment complaint finally. And I was like, oh, who is it? He goes, it's Bob and Doug. I'm just making up names here. And I was like, Bob and Doug, do we have a woman who works for us named Bob? Like, I literally did. And I was like, what? There's no women's names there. And he goes, yeah, there's not. And we had a gentleman who was pretty openly gay, and he was sitting next to in our telemarketing, and they were sitting next to a guy who was really had a problem with that with people who were gay, and it got all bent out of shape and almost to fisticuffs, which is extraordinary because you're like, let people live their lives, man. Like, what do you care? But
that is more common than you think. I have had my own experiences with that, and there is this notion that if you are gay, you're going to be, especially when there's a power dynamic going on,
Oh,
And
really?
if somebody's hitting on you and they are more powerful within whatever the organizational structure is, or they perceive they have more power, they think that as a gay person, you're even less likely to stir up crap than a straight person because you have more to lose. Now, that's a perception.
Really?
And I'm so glad that men are standing up more for themselves in these situations, and women and whoever.
That's definitely a power narcissistic sort of Machiavellian move. I don't know.
Absolutely is.
So in your book, you talk about, you going through what you went through. And so it's kind of a memoir and then also some advice.
Yeah. So the memoir part is shared some of this with about my childhood, growing up, coming out of the closet, getting back into the closet. It kind of transitions into how we live our lives once we fully come out. And if we haven't come out, what are the reasons? What could be different if you came out? In my coaching practice, I talk about this a lot, but in the book, I don't judge at all. I can't walk in anybody's shoes but my own. And the fact that 47% of people who identify as LGBTQ still aren't out in the workplace tells me there's a bigger problem here. So the advice that I give is know yourself, know your environment, but also be aware to the possibilities of bringing your full self to work and what that might do for you. Back to your point about what Oprah Winfrey said, when we poison ourselves like that from the inside, we continue this vicious cycle of limiting ourselves professionally. And so while I'm never going to tell anybody, you'd better come out, you need to do this for the greater cause, I do gently question and highlight the value in being your full authentic self.
There you go. Now, does that play into what you talk about called the pink camouflage?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, when I think about minorities, when we think about whatever minority group you bring to mind, we typically think of people who we can identify as a minority, visible minorities. So whether it's women or people of color, straight off the bat who you're dealing with. And you make adjustments and assessments about people. I mean, it's not just because it's a woman or somebody of color. We look at each person we see and make these micro assessments about that person. The difference, if you're gay, as LGBTQ people, we can hide who we are under certain circumstances. And so that translates to this notion of pink camouflage. I can hide this. If it's in my best interest, if I feel threatened, if I feel at risk, if there are one of a million different circumstances where I think I shouldn't be myself, I can hide that. And we learn that early on in life. If you grew up in, say, a family that was homophobic, if you're black, if somebody decides to make a racial slur, that's pretty awful because they know you're black and they're saying it to your face. It's awful regardless. But if they know this and they're saying it to your face, pretty crappy. But if somebody doesn't know you're gay and they don't like gay people, they will talk about it freely. I have experienced that firsthand. And so many of us growing up, we got those signals early on that it wasn't good to be gay. We heard it firsthand, and we learned how to camouflage ourselves with this pink camouflage so that we learned how better to make ourselves accepted in society.
I guess that's true. I mean, there are biases against people of color and women that inclusion is trying to solve in the marketplace. But because you can usually see who is a woman and who is has different has from different races. But I mean, I have a pretty good gaydar because I've had a lot of gay friends over the years, so I can usually tell. I've learned. But I've been a CEO all my life. I've run companies since I was 18. The one thing I learned a long time ago is I ran out of good ideas in 1995 or something, and that's when I went, I need you people, everyone who works for me, to come up with great ideas. And I learned that I am not the arbitrator of all the great ideas in the world, and probably less so as the older I get and the more the brain fog is over. and you never know where the great ideas come from. So I became an idea collector, and I love going to all my people and going, give me ideas, write stuff down. I don't care what it is, just wing it, throw it, give me anything, give me something. And I've learned over the years that some of my most profitable ideas have come from people that have worked for me, that sometimes they could be a line cook or a telemarketer, or some person that maybe isn't even the executive thing, and they can have a great idea, mainly because a lot of times they're at maybe the forefront of the business, where they're at the front line seeing what's really going on with my company that I'm not aware of. And so I'm not the arbitrator of all the great ideas, and I don't think any leader really is. And so saying I don't like this person or that person for whatever different reasons, unless they're just an awful human being or they're a lazy worker or something. But I've never trying to say, well, certain people don't have great ideas is just insane, and cutting yourself off from that lifeline. I mean, there's sometimes where my business has been saved because, just anybody in my company comes with an idea that I would never expect to come with a great idea or something, or just minor adjustments to my business. So it just seems to me insane that people are running with these biases, because you just never know where good ideas are going to come from. And that's not the only reason to be inclusive. There's a lot of other reasons. You want people to live their full life and their true authentic self, because if they can be self-actualized in your company, they're going to do better and be better people and deliver better results. And that kind of sounds like I'm just thinking of people as results-oriented people, but they're going to be happy, you're going to be happy, and the world's going to be happy. How does that sound? Did I round that out nicely?
I love you said that, and I would add one thing to that, which is, to your point, you've got people sitting around the table, and you're the leader, and you're getting all these great ideas. If they all look and act like you and have the same background, you're probably going to get similar ideas to what you've already come up with. You need that diversity around the table, like to your point, to get those great ideas.
Yeah, and people bring diversity, I think, from their different journeys of life. There's that famous, one of my favorite speeches is by Steve Jobs, and he talks about his journey of life where he failed college. I never went to college. And so our journeys and his aspects of looking at stuff was very different than most people's. And you just never know people's different journeys or stories in life. The things that they learned that they can apply to your business are all going to be different. That's why I love the show, is people come on and tell their different stories, and I get to just live in the hybrid of so many different variations of people's lives. There's no one right way. But so it's great that your book helps people deal with maybe coming out and encouraging them to live their full authentic life. You talk about the gay glass ceiling being real. Tell us about that and what you wrote about in the book about that.
Yeah, it comes from the notion, obviously, of the glass ceiling for women. And the gay glass ceiling, I talk about it being a different type of glass. And I think in many ways it can be thicker, especially when you think of the intersectionality. You have women who are also lesbians. You've got, you're not in just one group. But in many cases, the reason that the gay glass ceiling is there, and what I talk about, is this notion, again, of whether it's self-limiting or whether it's being limited by forces outside of your control. You have so many other barriers to making it through to the C-suite or whatever level you want to get to in corporate America. And not only are the barriers that aren't there that you or somebody else may put in your way, but you're also looking at different societies. You may work for a multinational, but that multinational may have offices in Dubai or Malaysia.
Oh, wow.
And you can't get those same opportunities as a straight person because it's illegal to be gay in those countries.
That's true.
And so you're not going to get those same opportunities for mobility, for the experiences, for the contributions to your organization, if you can't go to those same places that straight people can go to.
That's
and
true.
So even in the best organization, if you're a multinational, I just use that as an example. There are many others I talk about in the book. But if you're a national organization and you're limited in where you can go, then you're also limited in your career opportunities.
There you go. And it's dangerous to go to those countries.
It's dangerous.
Too. I mean, it's
absolutely.
It's not only, it's a life or death sometimes in some of these places. And some of the community or societies there aren't too inclusive oriented. So let's talk about what you do with your coaching services at conciliumcoachingllc.com. Tell us about some of the leadership coaching services you do. You do it for the LGBT community and their allies, as you put it. Tell us about how you service that, how you provide that, and some of the different opportunities you offer people.
Yeah. So first of all, I start off as fundamentally a leadership coach, and whether you're LGBTQ, an ally, whatever your background is, I'm a leadership coach, and then I bring that empathy as a gay man myself to my coaching practice with the LGBTQ community. And what I tend to focus on, not exclusively, but largely so, are the unique issues and challenges that this community faces in their own career path. And that may not be laterally moving up within an organization. Often it is. It may just be navigating the politics, navigating how you deal with being gay in an organization while also trying to move up or move around. And then with the allies, a lot of the coaching comes into play when they're trying to figure out how to be more supportive of their LGBTQ colleagues at work. Challenges they may face standing up for when it would be easier to stay silent.
Yeah.
And all this comes into play in coaching, because the idea of coaching is that I went to the Hudson Institute, great program for coaching. And the way we learn it is we empty ourselves out emotionally and physically and intellectually. We're there for the individual. They fill us up with what they need to talk about so that we can approach the conversations with curiosity and a desire to know more about where they're coming from. And so that's the approach that I take in my coaching. The difference, I'll say, is with the further up I go in terms of the people I'm coaching, so let's say C-suite or maybe a level below C, what I'm often working on there are people who are either allies. There are very few LGBTQ community people at that level. But what I'm working with are people who are allies or people who may be my generation, Generation X, maybe some who are still baby boomers, and they're struggling. They're struggling with how to embrace the notion of this next level of diversity compared to what they entered the workforce with 30, 40 years ago. And they want to do the right things. They just don't know how to go about it. And they don't want to get themselves in trouble. They don't want to get the organizations in trouble. And they want to be a more empathetic leader. And so often what I spend my time with and coaching with folks at that level is how to embrace that empathy. I'm not telling them they have to change their religious, their spiritual beliefs, their societal views. But if they want to be an inclusive and an empathetic leader, and I'll say that with an asterisk that I'll come back to, but if they want to be an inclusive and an empathetic leader, then it's in their best interest to figure out what's inside them that they can pull out in order to be able to do that and be as effective and inclusive as possible.
There you go. So let me ask you this. Are you seeing, you mentioned the boomers, and, they grew up in a generation that, they had some pretty hard biases and stuff, and they struggled to overcome it. Even at Gen X, we've had to do some cleaning of our biases and kind of understanding the world. And there's kind of been an arc of change for us. And I think we were more kind of, I don't know if we were more open-minded. I don't know. It's on a show about Gen X's personalities. But are you seeing, my understanding is what they say is that the new generations like millennials and I think Gen X on the cusp and the new Gen Zs, are you seeing that they're more open to everybody and more inclusive, and the future is looking brighter on that pathway? Is that happening the way everyone says it is?
Yeah, I would say in short, yes. And I have been very fortunate at Ernst & Young. By the very nature of our organization, I've been able to work with people straight out of college all the way up to people who are retiring at 60, 62 years old. And so I've seen multiple generations. And what I notice consistently is people in their 20s, this is just a non-issue. Entirely non-issue. Nobody even cares. I'm so used to that dramatic music playing when I say my husband, dun dun dun, right? And they don't care. They're like, okay, well, yeah, tell him I said hi. And the older you get, the more you will see some sort of reaction. But even so, what I am noticing, and this is where I say hats off, the younger generation isn't taking crap either from the older ones, and they are more comfortable with calling them out on something that they believe is fundamentally, ethically, morally wrong, and they see that bias and that discrimination against the LGBTQ community as morally wrong. And I've seen this happen time and time again. Again, maybe Ernst & Young is a bubble, but I do believe, to your point, overall, there are few as bright with these younger generations coming out because it truly doesn't matter to them anymore.
There you go. It's good that we're progressing that way. I had somebody tell me one time we were talking about politics, and they're like, it just may have to be that a certain older generation has got to fade away. And that's just how progress has to work. There's some people that really struggle with, if you spend a lifetime, what's the old, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You can, really. You can lead a horse to water and make them drink. You just have to feed them a lot of salt.
I got to use that. That is.
Feel free. I stole it from somebody on Twitter that told it to me. I think I was joking about how you can't lead a horse to water, and they're like, you can. You just feed it lots of salt. That thing will drink water.
Give it a salt lick.
Gotta get a salt lick. That thing will find water for sure. So another topic you talk about in your book that I was going to have you expand on. What is a gay decision diamond? What is that?
Right. So imagine you're meeting somebody for the first time. And I'll use the example that actually happened to me. I'm sitting next to somebody on the plane, and this was right after the Supreme Court ruled on gay marriage in 2015. Mm-hmm. They started ranting about that. Marriage is Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Right? That old chestnut. Isn't that beautiful? It's my favorite. And I was faced with a decision. I'm on a 4-hour flight to Boston. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. And so I'm faced with this decision diamond, like in process maps. If you work in project management, or you develop process maps, you have these actions. And all of a sudden you get to an action and it says, okay, before I can take the next action, I have to take a decision. Do I do X, Y, or Z? Yes or no? And so my decision diamonds are the series of yes, no questions that LGBTQ folks have to answer before they can continue on. And so I was faced with my first decision diamond in that situation when I decided, who is this jerk? Are they worth my time? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Are they worth my time? Do I want to just listen more to what they say because I'm interested? And by the way, that's also pink camouflage that plays in here. But I have to decide then, do I say, well, I'm gay? Yes or no? Yes. Okay. Am I willing to put up with the discomfort for the next 4 hours? Because now I've sat next to this jerk and he's the jerk, but now I got to sit by him. So the point being, we are faced every day with decision diamonds like this, and they all happen in microseconds. We are figuring out, and we're so good at it because we've done it our whole lives, whether we were in pink camouflage or whether we were out, they're still there. And so these decision diamonds can get pretty exhausting as well if we're having to figure out in every situation, if this person doesn't know that we are a member of the LGBTQ community, we have to go through a series of decision diamonds with that individual. There
you go. I mean, normally in a public sphere, I would just use stoicism for that and just be like, I don't know, you're an idiot. I'm not going to waste I'm not going to think about you. But when I imagine that happens in a work environment. And so, you're on a team with Bob. I always like to use Bob. You're on a team with Bob. That's a great employee's name, Bob. This seems mean to try.
It reminds me of the Bob Newhart show. I
think that might be where I pull it from. But he was a great comedian. But you're on a team with Bob. I just like the sound of the name Bob. You can negate it with just Bob. Like Bob's an asshole. It just comes across. It just does it so well. Like Jack doesn't do it. Bob. Fucking Bob. So you're on a team with fucking Bob, and Bob, spouts off what you heard on the plane. And, then you have a problem because you're like, do I have to continue hearing this for the rest of my career with this dude? I'm stuck on a team with him. And, again, those are the things that really don't need to be in the thing. The funny thing about the whole Adam and Steve thing is I've been single for all my life. And I have some issues with marriage and divorce. As in like, it's kind of like COVID. I never want to get it on me. And there's a running punchline through my life and what I see in my life because of, I suppose, my bias. But, I see everybody who tells me the hallowed nature of marriage and, the sanctity of marriage crap, and you find out they're cheating and they got a mistress on the side and, they end up divorcing, it seems like every, a guy who's a preacher who's telling me about the hallowed nature of whatever, he's got a hooker in the basement or something. I don't know. And you're just like, oh yeah, the thing there. So I have a whole different bias to, if you tell me you're married, if you tell me you're married, that's fine. I don't care. It's your world. Have fun with that. But I just figured I'd bring that up for the funness of it.
I have to say, I love that analogy as well. I can tell you all sorts of stories about the sanctity of marriage, and I am married, and I will tell you, I was determined. So my husband and I was determined. He said, well, why don't we get married? We got married in 2016. And he said, well, we could get married earlier. I said, no, I want to wait till I can have the state seal of Texas on my marriage certificate. That's another story for another time.
You're selling my first 10 ex-wives. Yeah. I'm just kidding. That's a joke.
To your point about fucking Bob, I have experienced quite a few of those guys in my life. It's fascinating because this is something I have coached people in my coaching practice about as well. When and again, these power dynamics, there's such a factor of where Bob is in relation to you in the hierarchy.
Yeah.
If you're entry level or junior and Bob's more senior to you, even if you have every right to report him or say something to him, you ask yourself the question, what does this mean for my career and my opportunities for development and advancement? What assignments do I get if I say something? Am I branded the troublemaker? It's easier the further up you go, and the likelihood increases that you are more senior to Bob, because then you can say, hey, asshole, let's have that conversation one-on-one, come into my office and see if you got a different response. Because then the power dynamics shift. I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, but there is some value in being able to leverage that power to influence for good.
Definitely. People just shouldn't bring their own personal biases in the thing. No one wants to hear politics at work. No one wants to hear your opinions, and all that interesting stuff. Do you find, now evidently you're a practicing Christian still. What's it like to deal with all that in the workplace? There's a lot of stuff you can run into in the workplace with all the things you got going on there.
Yeah. Well, I will say I'm no longer a Southern Baptist. I'm Episcopalian now. Shocker, spoiler alert, but I am a practicing Episcopalian. And the thing that appeals to me so much about the Episcopal Church is that they have three fundamental points on a triangle. There is tradition, scripture, and reason. And that last element of reason appeals to the intellectual. In me, we're all intellectual.
Yeah.
But we often go into our faith, putting our intellect aside and just say, well, that's God's will, or God doesn't like it, because we all assume we know what God's will is. And so we set that intellect. And faith isn't about setting your intellect aside. It's about using your intellect to decide what you believe and what your faith is about. And so that's how my spiritual journey has evolved into what it is now, and being able to use my intellect without apology. But it's funny that you talk about the workplace, because with Ernst & Young and with many large organizations, you might have people who are practicing Christians or Buddhists or Muslim or whatever it is, Jewish, and on. And there's so much diversity in that. What I find challenging is in my coaching practice, I have been shocked when people say, I have people approach me in the hallway at work and ask if they can pray over me because I'm gay.
Shit. I shouldn't laugh at that, but that is extraordinarily dumb that people do that. But
it is crazy. And so
you're like, I can pray for myself. I'm Christian.
Yeah. Can I pray over you for being?
Can I pray to you for being stupid? Maybe
yeah.
I think there's enough prayers in the world to fix your stupidity, but
yeah, let me get all my other gay folks around me and we'll do a prayer chain for you. But it is crazy that some of the stuff that you see like that, it happens. And this one example, I said, well, what'd you do? Did you go to HR? And they said, well, this was the HR lead who asked to pray over me.
Are you serious? Wow.
I'm thinking, you need to find another job. But the point is, this is the kind of stuff that happens in what I would call less enlightened organizations. I appreciate that sounds a little patronizing, but the surprising thing is that it happens at all. But you have people who, on top of having navigate the corporate ladder just from their own performance and capabilities in relation to being gay, now you've got people who are bringing religion into it and asking them if they can pray over them to pray the gay away.
Jeez, that's one way to stack the HR complaint.
Right?
Check all the boxes, if you will. I shouldn't laugh about that, but it's so ignorant and stupid. I mean, the way I always run my companies, I just want you to do your fucking job and do the work you're supposed to do. Like all that other stuff, I don't want to hear about. Like I'll yell at my employees if they spend like an hour on the phone with their girlfriends or wives, because I'm like, I don't pay for that, man. You go home and do that. Right. Like I don't know what you do anyway. Like why would you talk to your girlfriend or your wife for 2 hours at work? You got to go home and talk to her some more. Like what the hell? Like
what else do you have to say during the day that you can't wait till the evening?
Like, I mean, and technically your work is the time to get away from them and like get a break. Like my girlfriends, they get 5 minutes, man. They get 5 minutes in a day. Maybe if they call twice, they got something they need to run by me or something. But it's like, no, I'll see you at home. I spend 8 hours at work and I spend the rest of the time with you usually. And I mean, I'm working here. I'm making some money, man. I got to pay for all that expensive shit you buy on Amazon.
I hear you on that. It's funny because I'm lucky because Simon is a teacher. And so he doesn't really have the time during the day to talk because he's always in class. And it drives him crazy because I'll text him. I'll say topics for discussion this evening and send like 4 or 5. And
this is why I'm not married. The marriage jokes. But, hey, you guys have been married for a long time. You guys are happy and all that good stuff. So this has been really insightful and hopefully given people, we put these on LinkedIn and LinkedIn newsletter. So, there's a lot of HR people and hopefully some of them are learning. You joked about the HR person who did the Christian thing. But the one thing to remember, people, is stupid is forever. As I think it was Ron Brown said, one of the something Brown, stupid is forever. It's you can't fix it. So don't be stupid, or try not to be stupid, or at least try and fix your stupid. Or if you can't fix your stupid, do what Shakespeare said. It's better to be silent and not say what you think than to open your mouth, and to be thought as stupid than to open your mouth and prove it, which is probably should have done a long time ago with the podcast, because everyone's been like, he's been stupid for 15 years. It's Chris Voss. Anyway, give us your final pitch as we go out about the book, about people onboarding with your services and picking up the phone or the email and connecting you with your coaching services.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so final pitch I would say here is, I would love for you to buy the book, but more importantly, I would love for you to be your authentic self, whoever you are, wherever you are. And if you have trouble with that, reach out to me. If you don't want to reach out to me, reach out to someone. Life's too short to live in hiding and to have those gay decision diamonds draining all of your energy every day. Be yourself, be authentic, and reach out to me.
There you go. And an add-on point, what you said, it's draining. It is draining when people hide who they are, or they hide their trauma, or they hide their issues. They're living in the anxiety of it. We've talked a lot about trauma and different issues on this show, and what people hide, what people mentally deal with. And the hiding is sometimes so much work for people, and it's so draining. And I imagine is for the LGBTQ community, and it's so much work, and you can't be, I think, be as creative and be as, like you say, your authentic self, and contribute as much as you possibly could, and focus on your life when you're focused on, like what you talk about, the pink camouflage. So I learned some new terms today. So there you go. That's why we do the show.
Great. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's all about I learn more off this show than probably anybody else does. Probably because I have to listen to every episode. But no, I hope our audience listens and learns, because we need to progress, and we need to be a smarter world and a better world for everybody. Because there's no one. You look at the CEOs of Google. He grew up on a dirt floor in India, poor. There's Steve Jobs was an immigrant family. There's no one group of people in this world that have all the great ideas. They just don't. And the more this and faster this world revolves and goes, I mean, with AI, it's getting a little freaking out of hand. Even I'm at this point going, hang on, can we slow down a little bit? This coaster's going faster. So, it's really important that we give everybody a shot at the title. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Kevin. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Chris. I appreciate being here. Really enjoyed our time together.
And thank you for coming. And just remember, I gave you the title of Gentlemanese, or whatever that sort of gentleman bit I made up at the beginning. We improv every ramble on the show, and I just wing it. Sometimes it's really funny and interesting. Sometimes I'm like, where the hell did that come from? But that's the power of the stupidity of the ramble. Thanks to my audience for coming in. We certainly appreciate you. Without you, we couldn't do it at all. We had some great reviews come in on the iTunes there. So if you get a chance, go give us a 5-star review over there. We really appreciate it. Imagine having your beverage of choice while dishing with your bestie. Chris Voss is that smart and boisterous friend with decades of high and low experiences to draw from. It's a back and forth educational forum where all can learn and grow. Lively, insightful education banter. 5-star review from someone there on the iTunes. We certainly love you and appreciate you, those people who take out their personal time to do it. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, YouTube.com/Chris Voss, and all those places on the internet. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time. And that should have us out.